These are two seams, and they look the same, but they're made in a different way. And that is the tip that I'm going to share with you today. So if we flip them over, you'll see that one is made of two pieces of fabric. They were likely married together face to face, sewn, and then opened up to create a very familiar seam. You can see that this is what would happen when using a sewing machine, as well as this particular one was done by hand. The other side is a technique that I like to refer to as pleating, much like a pleated skirt. When this side is visible, it would be referred to as a pintuck, which is very popular with clothing. When we look up close, you can see that the fabric is folded and not cut. Therefore, if you were to pleat something instead of piecing something, you would create the illusion of a seam, the texture, adding that element of texture to a quilt, but you would not be taking the extra time and energy to cut something and piece it, and you would also not be losing that extra amount of fabric in the piecing. You can see that the seam in a pleat is quite small. Here are some examples of pleats. This one is a circle, and you'd be amazed that when you've ironed this flat and then quilted it down, it lays very flat, even though that little bit of fabric has been lifted up to create the pleat. This side is a pintuck side. You've got your visible knots there. And this is the side that's the pleat. So both sides can be used face up in a quilt. I tend to pleat more than I pintuck, but they are both lovely options. You can also do surprising textures. So this is not a geometric circle, but more of an organic shape that goes off the edge and loops around. You can also work with incomplete pleats. And so I love the way that this pinches and then goes off into nowhere. And this you might be familiar with as being similar to a dart. If you are making a shirt, a fitted shirt, usually for a woman, that might have a dart along the chest. But here you can see it's a pleat / pintuck, and that will quilt and lay flat for you as well. You can also get some geometric patterns. This one is in progress. So you can see that needle's still in there. It's been pinned, and I'm just sewing along to make this geometric pleat. I'm going to demo how to do this for you. And I like to begin by cutting my thread using my body as a ruler. I don't need much thread, so I'm just going to go to my elbow and cut. I like to thread my needle by bringing my needle to the thread. Then I'll use a quilter's knot, layering and wrapping 3 times to the tip, drawing that through, getting a nice secure knot. And now to make a pleat, I will use my rubber gripper and my pushing thimble. And here I'm going to begin just by folding my fabric in half and making my pleat. Makes sense to me to use a nice small seam allowance, so you can see that I'm not very close to the edge. This is definitely less fabric than a traditional 1/4 of an inch seam. And you can also see the way that I work, you can get a whole lot of fabric stacked on your needle, and then with the help of that rubber gripper, it can pull through. And then you just want to stretch that out. And I'll get my last couple of stitches. You can see I'm moving the fabric more than the needle, and I do that a lot when I'm quilting as well, moving the fabric more than the needle. And here I'll finish with a tailor's knot, creating a loop and pulling through. And here you've got your pleat. I like to use a contrasting or fun-looking color because then you get that little hint of the handwork, but you can be more traditional and use the same color as well if you want. And certainly this side could also be the front. That pintuck side is beautiful as well. If I wanted to do something more round or curved, rather than folding and working, you can just pinch anywhere that you'd like. Again, keeping a nice small seam allowance. And you can stack and then just pinch every so often as you guide your needle around a curve. So here I can be curving as though I'm making a half circle. Pull through here. And now maybe I'll just do something surprising and curve back, making this more of a dart or a seam that doesn't end right away. Okay, and so now here, take my needle off, just inch that along, making sure it's not gathered any more than it needs to be. And now create again that tailor's knot with the thread that I've got left. Knotting twice. Trim my excess thread. Add that to my ball jar. I like to use this for trapunto. And now here I've got a nice little curvy question mark type pleat right here. So you could do letters, you could make someone's face. There's no limit to the things that you can pleat. So I hope you enjoyed that tip.